how would you describe what a producer does?
I think that was like the most popular question for the first 10 years of my career at every holiday gathering.
Then I don't feel bad. I'm in good company. All right, Christopher Sepulveda, welcome to At the Vanguard.
Thank you. It was nice to be here.
And is it fair to introduce you as a producer? Is that your title, or do you introduce yourself another way?
No, producer. Yeah, I've been a producer my entire career, actually, which is, bar a few bartending stints and some random jobs, but that is what I do day to day.
As we all did. Yeah. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
Yeah, I think like a lot of us in the entertainment industry, I did want to be an actor. I was a child theater actor, did quite a bit of work regionally and professionally, semi-professionally, and then moved into producing as I got older.
Okay, nice. So you did do some acting when you were younger.
I did, actually, all the way through college. And I was pretty good, I will say, but I wasn't great, and I was never going to make the kind of career that I wanted out of it. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with producing, early on, and directing and writing as well. I went to film school. I was in the writing directing program in film school, and that's kind of how I went to film.
Which school?
Chapman University. Into Dodge College.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So, was there anything else that you did between your acting and college years and then becoming like a full-fledged producer, or was that kind of a straight shot?
Yes and no. So when I was in undergrad, I kind of created a new musical show that with some friends, we put on a production for our school, and I was in it and kind of helped create the show. Mm-hmm. But we didn't have a producer, and I think at that point I didn't really know what producing was. But it turns out I was actually kind of doing that thing. I was putting the show together and really fell in love with that process. And it was a really like amazing marriage between the kind of creative aspects and business aspects that I found myself excelling at. Mm-hmm. So when I went to film school, I was actually in the writing directing program, and early on, I loved writing, and that's what I studied in undergrad as well, but didn't love directing as much. And so I started auditing the producing classes to kind of see if I liked that, and I really did. So I preferred producing and writing, and right out of school, I worked in the industry. I worked at ICM, the talent agency, and then from there started producing. So I was very lucky, very fortunate.
Is what you're doing now as an actual producer pretty reflective of what you learned in your producing classes?
That's a good question. No. I mean, yes and no.
I mean, I'm a college teacher, so like I understand the discrepancy between the real world and the classroom. Yeah.
Absolutely. People often ask me if I regret going to film school or, appreciate going to film school. And I think there's no way that I'd be doing what I do now had I not gone. If for nothing else, for the relationships that I formed there, I'm still very close with a lot of colleagues that I went to film school with. Just learning kind of how the production process works. And it was really getting on set and having that experience with everybody and that camaraderie, that kind of hands-on experience, I think, that taught me what producing really was. Mm-hmm. And then after school, I think I learned a lot at ICM as far as the business side there. And trial by fire, my first film, we did probably everything wrong, but we got through it. And, we went from there.
So you went to film school and your first producing gig was a film, but you now produce both film and theater, right?
That's exactly right. Yes. So in fact, my first film was with a film school colleague, two of them actually, that I worked on. But I started producing theater during the writer's strike, during the 2008 writer's strike.
Oh.
When we had a bunch of projects in development film-wise and really couldn't do too much. And I had seen a terrific play at a small theater in LA, and I reached out just kind of blindly and expressed my interest in what they were doing and asked if I can come and kind of volunteer, shadow, or learn from them. And they were really open to it. And so I started spending time at that theater, kind of learning the ropes there. And it was it's film and theater are obviously very different mediums, but there's a lot of crossover in terms of producing and production. So it was a bit of a natural fit, and that's how I started producing theater from there. And I've been very lucky to do both throughout my career.
Do you have a preference? Do you like one more than the other?
Some days.
What about today?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, they're such different animals in some respect. Theater is can be immediately gratifying. Being in the audience in being there, watching people kind of experience something, and you never know really what's going to happen, is really thrilling. But it's ephemeral, right? And I think in film, you get to see the product for however long that you make. So I think they're different, but both really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, part of the reason I wanted to talk with you is because you're a producer, and I think that role or that title is often very mysterious to someone like myself and other people who are like just, the run of the mill artists, like just piano players, actors, So forgive me for kind of taking this posture of ignorance, but it's genuine. How would you describe what a producer does?
I think that was like the most popular question for the first 10 years of my career at every holiday gathering.
Then I don't feel bad. I'm in good company.
And I'm still not sure like the answer is satisfying. I think my mother's just given up asking, but it really depends. I think producing, especially in they're very different in film and theater as well in some ways. But it can mean so many different things, and it really depends on the project, the producer, and the particular position that you're in. I think in general, and in kind of what I do, so I'm a creative producer. I start kind of as early as possible with the creative team and really work on development through production and then distribution. So I'm usually one of the few people that's involved with a project from the very, very beginning all the way through release, which is something that I love. And sometimes it can take years to work on a project. But it's really, I think, fulfilling, and that kind of storytelling aspect that I love about producing gets fulfilled there. But I think that, so I tend to think of it, a bit like a chief of staff. So you're effectively putting the team together and running the team that will create whatever the project is. And you're also kind of the first line of defense for the director, for the auteur of the project there. And my job in a lot of ways is to make sure that we have the best designers, the best staff, the best team in place to carry out whatever project that we're working on, and then trying as much as possible to make sure that the director is protected and can realize their vision there.
Protected against what or who?
Time, money, just trying to make sure that they have everything that they need and they're comfortable enough to create whatever vision that we signed up together to create. And I think the other side of that is a fiscal responsibility to any of the investors, to anyone that is financing the project, is making sure that we're being responsible and working towards something that can eventually hopefully return their investment.
Okay. And you said you qualified yourself as a creative producer. So there are other types of producers, which you are
exactly
not.
Right. So there's some producers that are solely financing, that their specialty is really either raising money or contributing capital. Some that, like a line producer, effectively is managing a budget. An executive producer on film and theater and TV are a bit different, but some of that is kind of contributing something that will help the project get made, whether it's their name, their stature, their connections, something there. So it really depends on the person and also the project. I've played several different kind of producing roles, but by and large, I tend to function as a creative producer.
And you said you come in usually early on in the process, sometimes at the very beginning. So by that, you mean, like, hypothetical, someone wrote a film script, right? Or a play, and you're in at that initial moment where they're pulling a team together to produce it at what capacity? Like, what are we talking about when you say the beginning?
Sure, that's exactly right so far. So for me, and again, everyone's different, I like to come in as early as possible. So if somebody comes to me with a script and it already has an entire creative team and some actors attached, unless it's kind of a no-brainer in terms of, it's going to be a huge success, it's probably not going to be interesting to me. But my value is really in helping put that package together, so I like to come in usually when the script's not even done, and I can see that either the concept is strong or we're far enough along that there's a movie there, and then work with those writers to really get the story in shape for something that is filmable or is producible, and then putting that team together, networking, using my network, or attaching actors, attaching talent there, and then shopping it around either for financing or for distribution, depending on what the project needs at that point.
Mm. And, feel free to skip this question if it's indecorous, but are you generally paid at the front end or the back end?
That's a great question. And again, I think it does, as an independent producer, it's so entrepreneurial in a way because each project effectively is like its own company with entirely new rules, entirely new structure. So it really depends on the project. But typically, creative producers will work on a fee basis and then back end for the project as well. So like I would have a fixed fee for producing the project, and then depending on performance, some contingent compensation there.
Gotcha. So where do you feel a producer's influence matters most?
So it's hard to answer because there's so many different ways, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes it's about relationship management. Really, it's about playing that person in the middle, making sure everyone on the team is getting along and working well together, and that can be equally as valuable as talking to investors to find more money for a project that is maybe slightly over budget, or when something is going over budget, trying to figure out where you can cut to get us back on track there. So I think it's a really hard question to answer because it depends so much on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think personally, there's a lot of value in being able to have those creative conversations and understand what the creative team needs and is going through, and then also being able to balance that with what the kind of economics or the kind of fiscal reality is of the project.
Right. You mentioned going over budget. I've never been part of a project that has not gone over budget. Have you? Or is that a myth?
It's funny. Budget's so tricky in every aspect, right? Not just film and TV and theater. But I do pride myself on having been able to control the budgets on the projects I've done.
Kudos to you.
And it is, you're constantly worrying because as a producer, you want what's best for the film as well. You want all the money on the screen. You want the biggest effects. You want the biggest, stunts. But then having to kind of, figure out create. And it's, I think earlier you were asking what a producer means or what a producer does. And I think at the end of the day, it's creative problem solving. It's really thinking about this is what we want. How else can we get that same idea, that same effect in maybe a cheaper or a different way?
Yeah. Do you is a producer considered kind of the pinnacle of the whole team? Are they at the top, or is there someone or something above the producer?
In terms of hierarchy in the independent level, producer is the top. At a studio, it's a little bit different. So if you're a studio producer, so obviously you have the network, the studio, and studio heads there to answer to. So you have in some ways the control. Not really. It's a bit of a fallacy, but all the blame as well. So it can be a tricky position.
Right. Yeah. All roads lead to the producer. There's this stereotype that producers are either the money people or the note givers. How accurate or inaccurate is that, do you think?
Again, I think it depends. I mean, some producers are exactly that. I think it depends on the kind of producer that you are. And I think that's more often associated with studio producers. But I think on the independent level, you're wearing so many hats, and you typically are kind of almost the ringmaster in some ways, really orchestrating everything that's happening. And also at the same time, being the person that everyone can come to and hopefully rely on to make sure that they have what they need to get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Are there other big misconceptions that you think people have commonly about producers, or ones that you've encountered in your career?
I think that's a big one that you mentioned. I think the hardest thing is people just don't really know what the job means. I think that at the end of the day, they're the ones that, if something goes wrong, they do get blamed, and I think ultimately, oftentimes are responsible for. So I think it could be the greedy producers or the terrible producers. So I think it's really easy to be a scapegoat as well. But I think at the end of the day, it's really just not understanding exactly what the role entails.
Gotcha. So when you're collaborating with writers and directors and other creatives, what's your approach? Do you like to be more involved day to day? Are you more sit on the sidelines, laissez-faire? How do you tend to go about that?
I'm very hands-on personally. Okay. So I I typically am involved day to day, reading everything, giving notes, really working as closely as possible with the writers. And again, I think it depends on the team, the project, and whether or not based on what's needed. But I tend to get involved with teams that welcome that and are looking for collaboration.
Hmm.
And that's one of the things that excites me about producing. At the end of the day, it's not just about numbers, not just about budgets. It really is helping tell that story in the best way possible.
And how do you balance the financial responsibility with protecting the integrity of the work?
Yeah, I think it's a give and take kind of situation. I think it's really trying to figure out where you can spend a little bit more, or when you can kind of honor exactly what everyone's looking for, and then other times when you can find ways to kind of pull back. Or again, like I think being creative and creative problem solving, thinking about how can I achieve the same thing for less money or a different way. If a project has 6 locations, but 2 of them, the scenes could take place in the same locations as the other ones, maybe that's an easy way to kind of cut a few dollars, but then allow more time for the scene to play out or something there.
Hmm. And you mentioned that you like you said, you come in early on in the process typically. So these are projects that obviously have not been produced yet, are not vetted in the marketplace. So there's some risk involved there. So how do you decide when to push forward with a project that might be risky or when to say no? What's your criteria there?
It's a great question. People used to always ask kind of what our mandate was or what my mandate was for producing. And as much as I'd like to kind of have a specific type of project that I want to make or do make, I tend to, it's a combination of projects that I'm excited about because it takes so long for producing anything. It takes so long to get it done. So you really have to kind of love the material, love the team, and really want to invest so much time and energy into it. But also thinking realistically about what I can get made. There's a lot of projects that I have loved and really, really wanted to get done, but just knew that either the marketplace wasn't right, I'm not the right producer to get it over the finish line. So it's kind of finding that balance between what's realistic versus what I really respond to personally.
And then once you're in the project, how do you navigate conflicts when creative visions clash or when a project starts to wobble a bit?
I've been pretty lucky. I think the teams in the projects that I've gotten involved with, have been we haven't had a lot of that. We haven't had a lot of kind of animosity or creative difference in production. But I think it is kind of back to what I was mentioning earlier. I think it is about navigating relationships and really trying to find common ground. I think on any project, everyone involved just wants it to be the best that it can be. So we all kind of have that in common. Everyone's coming from at least that similar place. So trying to kind of understand everyone's kind of angle and thinking, and trying to reconcile and make sure that we're all kind of speaking together and working together. And ideally, the director is kind of the head of the pyramid, and we're all working toward their vision. I think as long as that's the case and everyone's really kind of doing their part to make sure everything comes together, I think there's usually success there.
Do you think a person needs to have like a certain disposition to be a producer, like certain character traits or mindsets or values?
Probably so, but I think that there are so many different types of producers and so many different people that are producers that I think it varies pretty widely. But I think you have to love it. I think for starters, it's not easy. It's not an easy job by any means. It can be thankless. There's a kind of old adage or old phrase: "Nobody thanks the producer,"
Yeah.
which is both biting and also true probably. You do so much work, and it's all behind the scenes. It's all in service of the film or the creative team or the theater piece, and it's easy to get blamed for things and then not ever acknowledged for doing them. So I think you have to kind of go into it with that, being okay with that. It can be grueling, it's really hard work. And also I think it's you talk to a lot of people, every day you're answering questions from the second you get onto set or into the theater, you're answering questions from the moment the day starts till the moment the day ends. Just being okay with that. And
Yeah. Did you see that show, that new series, The Studio?
You know, it's funny. I have not seen it. It's been
Oh my
recommended to
gosh.
me by nearly everyone. I'm sure it's terrific. It feels like going to work having to watch it. So I have
I
not
get
watched it
that.
yet.
It's so good just from, a TV making aspect and storytelling
I've heard
aspect.
wonderful things about it. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
I would just be so curious. Once you do watch it, let me know because I'm very curious to know how accurate you feel it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember watching Smash, which obviously is like a
Okay.
very heightened world, but
Hmm.
it's like, you some of those conversations are real and you've had them. So it's a little bit traumatizing
Hmm.
there. Between
Yeah.
that and like Entourage, the same thing. I couldn't really watch that, but they're all terrific series and shows.
Yeah. Have you ever said yes to a project that scared you?
Gosh, I think every time, probably in some way.
Hmm.
Uh, I think if it doesn't scare you a little bit, it's probably not the right project. I
Hmm.
think
Why is that?
I think like anything, I'm not a big fan just personally of doing things that are comfortable. And I think
Or
it's
safe?
it's exactly safer, comfortable, and like I like kind of testing myself and pushing the limits and pushing the envelope. Every project I do, I try and do something different or something bigger or better. So yeah, I think every project scares me just a little bit.
And kind of big picture again, why do you think producing matters?
I think in general, storytelling matters. I think I am in a very fortunate position to tell stories for a living.
Hmm.
And every once in a while, I get to tell a story that changes people or influences people or affects people in some way. And I think that's a really amazing opportunity. Um, and I think producers are one of the kind of key roles in any production, whether it's theater, film, TV, that help get the stories out into the world. So I think that's what makes it matter to me.
Hmm. So on that, like what sort of cultural impact do you think a good producer can have?
I've heard people say that producers, writers, directors have a responsibility to tell certain stories, and which may or may not be true. Personally, I don't see it as much as a responsibility as I do an opportunity to tell stories that may not be told otherwise, um, to help people that don't necessarily get to see themselves in popular culture and stories in necessarily in a positive light all the time, to get
Hmm.
to have that experience, to tell disenfranchised stories, to tell smaller stories. I'm an independent producer, so I can make and often do make smaller movies that studios can't do for
Mm,
various reasons. So I think that opportunity to get to pick and choose what I want to put out into the world is really a blessing.
yeah. If producing suddenly disappeared tomorrow, all producers vanished, what do you think what do you think audiences would notice first?
It's a hard question. Well, I think back to the pandemic, when we
Hmm.
couldn't really make anything, and entertainment was such a huge part of helping us get through a really scary and uh, mysterious time, I think.
Hmm.
And I think without that, I think people would realize really quickly, what moves us and what affects us emotionally. And we'd
Hmm.
probably talk to each other more.
So you're the reason. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. It's, my husband is a screenwriter, and something we've talked a lot about is kind of this perceived gap between someone who is kind of at the lower rung, just breaking into the industry. Maybe they just finished a screenwriting program or film program. And they don't have a ton of credits. They're trying to get their foot in the door, so to speak. So someone at that level, and then someone who's kind of quote unquote made it, right? And they've shot their first feature film, or whatever it is at that stage. That there seems to be this giant gap between A and B, right? Where a lot of people at this A position are trying to figure out, how do I get from here to there? Because it's not like a doctor track where it's like, okay, you just do your residency, or like a lawyer where it's like there's a clear path. You just follow this and eventually you'll get to the target.
Mhm.
You're sitting here at point A and you're like, how did you get up there? And everyone's got their unique, special story of how they got up there, but it doesn't really translate to the general, right? Do you think that gap exists, or is that sort of an illusion?
I think it very much exists, and I think you're exactly right that it's not like a kind of traditional profession where there's a very clear hierarchy or a very clear kind of ladder process.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the end of the day, there's really no kind of qualification to produce something. It's about getting the project made, and whatever way you take to do that effectively makes you a producer of that project. Having said that, I do think that you kind of learn along the way and you move up to different projects or to more frequent projects based on the success you have and what you learn along the way. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. For me, like my first feature film, I was a producer on, and I obviously had film school, so I had some kind of background in what production meant, and I was able to kind of to lean on that. But I learned so much during that process, and if I could do it over again today, it would be such a different experience. And every project is like that. You're constantly learning, and you're realizing where you excel, where you need partners, want partners to work with on a project. And I think so. It's less about kind of working your way up and more kind of realizing where your strengths are and where other people can join you to kind of fill in the gaps there. But it's intimidating, right? I think there's no like, okay, if I do this, then next I'm going to get to do this kind of thing, especially on the independent level.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it is like we are talking before that it's very entrepreneurial, and each project is its own company. Once that project goes away, you're effectively done, and then you need a new company.
Right.
It's like planned obsolescence, right? You're working at a job that you know is going to end.
Right. How did you get that first producing gig?
That was relationships from film school. So I was working at
Okay.
ICM at the time. My producing partner on the project and the director writer I had relationships with, and they came to me um, at that point to kind of put that project together. I had access to talent at the time as well from some other stuff I was working on, so I was able to help kind of bring some on-screen actors. I mean, by talent, some on-screen talent to the project, and it's exactly did that kind of pooled our resources and trying to kind of figure out what we could bring to the table, and we went from there. And luckily it went well. It was a great experience, and then that kind of launched from there.
Yeah. For other people who are at that stage where you were then, do you feel like networking is the biggest factor that works in your favor, or is there something else that some other lever they can pull?
I think there are lots of different ways to go about getting into the industry, but I think networking is a really instrumental and
Mm-hmm.
key one of those. I think I knew that I wanted to produce. So when I interned while I was still in film school at a company, a boutique production company in Santa Monica. And when I finished, and that went well. And when I finished that, they effectively asked me what I wanted to do. And I mentioned I was really interested in producing. And they were the ones that suggested I work at an agency, and they helped set me up at ICM. So it was like, just not being afraid to tell people what you're looking for, what you want to do, asking for help, and then
Mm-hmm.
leveraging those relationships to kind of move to the next step. Um, I think something that I'm especially when I was younger is much easier, but saying yes to things and like going out and going to networking parties and events and things that you may not necessarily want to do inherently,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be so important for just meeting folks and finding out what's out there, opportunities. I worked on a lot of different sets and volunteered a lot just to kind of learn the ropes and meet new people until you find your kind of cohort, your pack there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one way you can kind of certainly kind of move up from there. But yeah, but there's no right way. At the end of the day, it, nobody knows anything.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, since you're an independent, you said independent producer, right? Is that how you describe yourself?
I'm an independent producer, but I'm currently also the producer and the head of production at a production company called Apples and Oranges
Oh
Studios.
yes, yeah,
It
yeah, yeah, yeah.
produces theater and film and new media there as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I want to come back to apples and oranges, but first, do you find yourself taking on projects or taking on teams or people who are at that kind of initial stage where they they have not been established yet? This is kind of their first foray into the field, or do you have kind of like a a baseline of, okay, I need you to have a certain level of experience or credit or something before we work together?
Sure. I think it depends on the project and the position. I'm certainly not opposed to bringing on people that are very green and really new in their careers, as long as they're hard workers and we get on. You're
Mm-hmm.
working so closely with people, and especially independent production and small productions, that you really have to have a good relationship and be able to trust the folks you're working with. Um, in like a design position, you typically want someone that has some years under their belt or some experience there and can deliver the kind of design that the director's looking for or we're looking for. So I think it depends.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about Apples and Oranges.
So Apples and Oranges is a boutique production company, producing kind of commercial large scale theater, typically musical theater in particular, but all different theater, as well as film, television, and new media. And one of the mandates or the kind of hallmarks of Apples and Oranges is using new technology to create stories, whether that's through development all the way through distribution.
Mm. Is this where VR comes in?
We've done a lot of VR work, a lot of mixed reality, both AR, VR, especially during the pandemic. We did quite a few really interesting VR productions with them, or with Apples and Oranges. We're also using AI quite a bit right now, which is a bit of a hot button topic, but also really interesting. I'm learning so much about it, and it's really fascinating as well.
Yes, I want to press that hot button. Talk to me about AI. How does it factor in?
Sure. We're using AI, we're looking at AI as a tool, one of the tools in your tool belt, and not as a replacement for artists or not as a replacement for anything we've done before, but as a way to kind of enhance the process, either do things that we either weren't able to do before or do things in different ways than we were able to do before. And really, in the same way that online editing changed film and television editing, going from like a Steam Deck or a linear editing system to something digital, we're looking at it just kind of a part of the evolution of storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really excited about the implications and working with writers on ways to implement or use AI in their work. Anywhere from kind of brainstorming on the script side and the creative development side, which is I'm typically involved with, or on the kind of previs for film TV projects, rather than kind of hand drawing a storyboard, being able to mock something up fairly quickly, to give it a try, to just shoot a scene or something there, I think is really exciting as well.
Nice. How much transparency is there about where AI has played a role in the process, or do you even credit AI?
For us, complete transparency. Okay. We haven't released anything commercially with using AI just yet, so we haven't kind of dealt with the credit issues. But we are, again, it's part of our kind of DNA, or part of our fabric at the company. So we are very forthcoming about the fact that we are looking at AI, and not just AI, but really technology in general, as ways to enhance the creative process there. So we don't shy away from it at all. We're not scared of it. I think, and I think we all do, that it's rapidly changing things. So I think for us, it's really about kind of understanding it, getting a handle on it, and figuring out ways to use it ethically and use it for good.
Yeah. So you're not worried it's going to destroy our industries and kill all the jobs and eventually just
I'm not.
take over the world.
I'm not. I think it will change things, absolutely. Like any new technology has. I think that's not a new thing for us. It's I think back to like we're talking about theater, and we in film too, we still measure things in foot candles for lighting, but obviously we did not use real candles in theater or film for a century. So I think things have always changed. I remember when I first started working in theater, the thought of having a play using microphones for amplified sound was unheard of. And now you can't go to a commercial production without amplified sound and incredible sound design. So it's things change all the time. This is just, I think it's happening faster and it's much more public than other technological advancements. So it's a obviously again a hot button topic, but I don't think artists are going to go away. I don't. We've evolved so much throughout history, and I think that some artists are going to use AI to their advantage. And also, in terms of like democratization, some people that necessarily might not have been storytellers or might not have been filmmakers or theater makers will have the opportunity to be so because of tools
Mhm.
like that.
Do you have that same perspective on AI actors?
Like the actual like digital performers.
Yeah, like Tilly Norwood and that
Yes.
whole slate of others.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't personally have not been involved with that aspect of using AI. I
Mhm.
think it's interesting. I think at the end of the day that the audience will dictate, I think, what works. And I think if we find ways to make those kind of characters emotionally resonant, I think that there's probably a place for it. Um, I don't think human actors are ever going to go away. I think for me, like personally, one of the things I love about what I get to do in production is working with actors. It's working with humans. I love that experience. And when you're in a scene and everything's clicking and everything's going right, and it's palpable. You can feel it. Whether it's theater or on set. And I think that feeling for creatives and for artists is never going to go away. So I think they'll both exist. I think they'll both coexist, and I think audience members will determine what they prefer.
Mhm. Mhm. What about VR? So tell me how, because I've not seen a production myself. I don't think that has incorporated that. So how is this being woven into the fabric? This is theater you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Exactly right.
How is
So
it being woven into that?
I've been very fortunate to do several different live, yeah, live and not live, actually, not live and recorded theatrical productions in virtual reality. During the pandemic at Apples and Oranges, we were developing a live stage musical for a company in Orange County. And because of the pandemic, that project got shelved. But rather than kind of putting it on the back burner, we decided to continue developing the project using virtual reality. Again, our mandate is using new technology to help develop and produce new work. So during the pandemic, we decided to continue developing the project in virtual reality, and we built a virtual team. So we had actors all over the country, actually all over both North America and Canada, um, performing the show that we built with designers in the south of the United States. In Canada, our lead development team was in Canada, and we kind of built these virtual worlds, and we're able to fully produce a 40-minute musical
Hmm.
in virtual reality. We had live audiences come in and watch this show performed live in real time. And it was, especially during the pandemic when we were kind of starved for that human connection, it was really moving, really, really effective.
Wow.
And really, and for me, I don't have a technological background necessarily. And I was interested in VR, but thought of it a little bit like a kind of a sideshow. Didn't have much experience with it. And I was downtown at downtown LA at Two Bit Circus. If you've ever been,
Hmm.
I'm not sure if it's even still there, but it was like a VR amusement park, effectively.
Oh, wow.
And I remember thinking like a bunch of it was like more kind of geared toward gaming and not like really my thing necessarily. But I did one experience that was so moving and so realistic. I remember looking over like a virtual ledge and being nervous. And I'm not afraid of heights necessarily, but it was like you can feel it. It was really interesting. And
Yeah.
that's when I realized there's opportunity for storytelling and for real connection and emotion in virtual reality. And yeah, so I did that one. And we did partner with some creatives on a project called The Calling, which was
Hmm.
took place during the sanitation worker strike in Memphis,
Hmm.
when Martin Luther King comes down for leading up to his assassination. And that one was not, it was a musical as well, but it was pre-recorded, so that was to scale. And we ended up premiering that at Slam Dance. It was a really interesting hybrid between theater and film for me to get to do that.
Yeah.
So I've done a few of them now, and it's I think a really amazing medium, and there's so much potential for it. There's still a lot of kind of technical barriers to work out, I think, but it's really promising.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. And you said that Apples and Oranges works exclusively with new projects?
So yes and no. So my job at Apples and Oranges is largely to develop and produce new work,
Hmm.
but we are commercial Broadway producers as well. So we will get
Uh,
involved with commercial productions of existing work. Um, Apples and Oranges were producers on Hair in Memphis. Memphis was a new work. Hair obviously was a revival.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and in American Paris we worked on as well, which is a new show. So we do both as far as kind of commercial theater goes, but by and large we produce and develop new work.
Gotcha. So when you are searching for new work, well, sorry, don't let me assume. Do you search for new work or does it come to you?
Both. So we develop
Okay.
work in-house as well. So we do develop our own stories based on ideas and
Hmm.
creatives in-house. But we also work with a lot of writers. We run a program called Theater Accelerator now, actually Story Accelerator. It's broadened out a bit,
Hmm.
but is it, kind of a mix between a traditional theatrical development cycle and Silicon Valley kind of venture technology startup, or excuse me, accelerator. And so we kind of borrowed some of the principles from technology startups and incorporate them into theater development. So we've run several cohorts of that and have worked with over 100 writers. So we have a fairly amazing stable of new storytellers. And so we work with them as well. And then we also can get pitches in all the time.
How do people pitch to apples and oranges?
Directly, usually it's through relationships. Typically, it's
Hmm.
through projects we've done or other people that we've worked with or have some kind of relationship in the industry with. But people can just come to us, and if there's some existing relationship, we can't accept unsolicited material, unfortunately,
Right.
just legal requirements. But if we have some kind of relationship, we typically are open to talking to people about projects.
Interesting. Right. And you also are involved with Deaf West, right?
Yes.
Are you on the
So
board?
I am a board member. I'm actually the treasurer of Deaf West and the
Oh,
executive board director.
so is that you're wearing a different hat there? You're not a producer there, or are you both?
I've been both. So I've produced in several productions. I got involved with Deaf West actually originally because I was one of the lead producers on Spring Awakening, on the
Hmm.
revival that we did with that Michael Arden directed. That was my first production with them, and really how I kind of became part of the community and really fell in love with the culture, the language, and the people that either work at Deaf West or are involved with Deaf West. I joined the board shortly after that, and then became an executive board member. I think about 2 or 3 years ago now, and I've worked on several productions with Deaf West since.
Wow. And it's for people listening or watching who don't know, this is a theater company based in LA, right? But
It
they
is,
work
yeah.
on both
Exactly. Yes,
coasts.
we do have a
Yeah.
presence in New York as well.
Yes. And that their focus is it fair to say theater, or are they broadening?
We are broadening, so we do new media and film, TV work as well. But
Right.
theater is the kind of backbone and where how the company started.
And it's primarily presenting works that are for hearing and deaf audiences, I should say deaf and hearing audiences, presented in a blend of ASL and English, right?
Exactly right. So every production is bilingual. It's always ASL, American Sign Language, and spoken English.
Nice. Has so Spring Awakening was 2000 what?
The first production was September. We opened September 13th, 2014.
2014. Oh my God, that was
Yeah,
over 10 years ago.
when I was 10.
Jesus. So, okay. So it's been over 10 years you've been working with Deaf West. Do you feel that it's changed you in any way?
Absolutely, in so many ways. I think certainly from a creative storytelling perspective, but I think the culture is such an interesting one, and I've learned a lot from just the friends that I've made and the people that I've gotten to work with throughout that process. So it's
Hmm.
certainly taken me personally as well. From a producing standpoint, I've learned a lot. I think producing a show for Deaf West in at least two different languages, we've done some that are even more than that.
Hmm.
Um, I think is presents certain challenges that you may not experience in another show, but also so many amazing opportunities and can be so fulfilling as well.
Yeah. Have you picked up any ASL?
Quite a bit, actually. I understand it very well. I
Okay.
think, working very closely with DJ, artistic director, and several other
Hmm.
folks on the production team, I've gotten really used to kind of understanding the language. I'm a little bit intimidated to use it in some situations, but
Sure.
I feel pretty good about my handle on it.
Yeah. Nice. So, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I'm working on a few different projects. I'm doing some more television projects than I've ever done in the past. Primarily, my background is in feature film and theater. So we are, for the first time for me, branching out into some episodic series work
Mhm.
and some documentary work, which I'm excited about. Um, And yeah, we've got a really kind of packed year already, which I'm super excited about.
Nice. That's awesome. And how do you see the future of film and theater and TV? Do you see any big shift coming? I mean, we've talked about VR, we've talked about AI, but what do you see in the runway ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think things are obviously always evolving and changing. I think, everyone's talking about AI, and I do think it's going to be a huge game changer in the coming years. But for me, I think social media is a bigger uh, influence than even AI right now. I
Hmm.
think we're seeing audiences have real skin in the game and real control and power about dictating what they want to see and who they want to see on screen. I think the kind of star system is changing a bit. We're seeing TikTok create celebrities. We're seeing people command or demand content that would likely never really have the reach that it would otherwise,
Hmm.
which I think is great for more niche, kind of smaller stories potentially.
Hmm.
So I think that social media will continue to really democratize and change how and what gets made, and then eventually I think AI too. I think AI is going to really shift how things get made.
Hmm. Do you have any like passion project or like bucket list project that you've been itching to work on but haven't gotten a chance to yet?
Gosh, so many.
Really?
um, there's a lot of material that I've always thought would make great, like a lot of movies I thought would make really great musicals, and vice
Mm,
versa. So I think that there's a lot of adaptation opportunities that I'm excited to hopefully pursue at some point.
yeah.
Um, I'm excited about the TV work that we're doing right now.
And what would you say is the biggest lesson that producing has taught you about yourself?
I think one of the biggest lessons producing has taught me is resiliency. I think,
Mm,
and being always being open minded and not being afraid to learn something new, realizing that even though you've done something 10 times, there may be other ways to do it, or there's always different perspectives. So being open minded, so many things. I mean, confidence as well, communication. I think
hmm.
it's really, and because producing's been such a part of my life for so long, it's really all I know on some level on the kind of professional stage.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's really part of who I am.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you think is noteworthy?
I think one distinction that might be helpful is we talked a lot about creating film and making movies, in which case they're always new. Like I've never done a remake of a movie or even a sequel or a prequel for a project, a franchise film. On the theater side, I tend to gravitate toward doing new work, to really creating that story and telling something for the first time, creating those characters. But I have produced quite a bit of, or a few revivals as well. So quite a bit of existing theater.
Hmm.
And I think when I do that, I tend to try and find or work with artists that have a new take on an existing piece. For instance, we're talking about Deaf West and Spring Awakening. Um, I wasn't necessarily interested in producing that IP, that show in general, but
Hmm.
Michael Arden had such a really interesting and compelling way to tell that story. And then partnering with Deaf West, a company that I really admired and was interested in working with, made me interested in working on that show.
Well, what advice would you leave us with for emerging producers, creatives out there?
I think keep at it. I think if you really love it and you really want to do it and work really hard, you will be able to do it. I think just keep trying, keep pressing ahead. Figure out what your north star is. If it's telling a particular story or changing the world with a story, like what is
Hmm.
it that you really have to do and want to do? And just make sure you never kind of lose sight of that and enjoy it. It's so much work, like anything. Um, really have to kind of find joy in what you're doing.
Yeah. What's your North Star?
I don't know anymore. No,
That's
no, I
not
think
true.
no, it's not good at all. It is that I think that I've done it for so long. I often wonder like what else I would do or could do if I weren't producing.
Mm.
But I always remind myself, especially when it's hard. Like there are days that are just so grueling and so difficult, and you wonder like I'll do anything else. Like what else can I do? Uh, I remind myself that I get to change the world through telling stories, and sometimes it's a very small audience or a story that doesn't seem like a game changer necessarily, but somebody's affected by it. And, getting those messages after you premiere something or you open a show, seeing even on social media that somebody, it made somebody's day or you changed somebody's life is really gratifying. And in some small way, I get to create something new and to change the world in even a small way is my kind of guiding light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so true. Wow. Well, thank you so much. This was an awesome conversation. I really, really appreciate it.